this is a great strategic kind of competition of our time. What will you be watching out for in the National People's Congress, the commentary and the themes being set that will give us, I guess, an idea of how Beijing sees its role in the world going forward?
There'll be a couple of things I'll be looking at. Number one is what's the mix between consumption and investment. China historically, I think, has done a pretty good job of tailoring the answer to that question to the circumstances. And today, obviously, with greater tension between the two countries, China's hunkering down a little more. At the same time, the U.S. is trying to protect its supply lines so that it doesn't have to source outside, rather can have developed products in the country. I think you'll see China moving slightly toward an e-currency, ever so slightly. They clearly would like not to have the dollar dominate world financial markets quite so much. That's going to be interesting to see. How far do they go? On the U.S. side, clearly, this administration, Biden administration, is going to be doing a kind of a reset. Look at one thing, look at the tariffs and look at all the sanctions and then try to figure out which of these are effective and which of these are not. Some of them are not very effective. They don't accomplish their intended purpose. They hurt people in China more than they hurt Americans. In some cases, Xi Jinping doesn't care about some of the sanctions. It's like water off the back of a duck. So you'll see this administration going to look at all the sanctions, trying to figure out which ones work and which ones don't, to find out which of their toolbox are effective.
We're also expecting to hear more developments on their plans to overhaul the electoral system in Hong Kong, as well as any references to the situation in Xinjiang as well. You've said before that under President Obama, the US didn't have any leverage to really do anything about that situation, or potentially what's happening in Hong Kong as well under President Biden. What leverage is there in terms of some of the sanction reviews that you're saying will take place?
I think, frankly, some great leverage is a reputational risk that China suffers if they don't address Hong Kong, especially if they don't address Xinjiang. It's difficult for sanctions imposed by the United States or sanctions imposed by other countries, say the UK, to have real direct effect in trying to change behavior. That's why I think Biden's going to try to do a reset. On the other hand, the more the United States stands up for human rights and other Western countries also strongly espouse human rights, that somewhat embarrasses China. It might be not totally water off the back of a duck, but it's still Xi Jinping has his legacy. He wants to be a country that's respected. And also, when the United States stands up for human rights, that empowers a lot of the people within China, whether it's Xinjiang or Hong Kong, wherever it is. It gives them faith. It gives them a little hope. That's something the United States has done in the past and will continue to do so, but do it appropriately. Don't do it in a personal way. Don't try to embarrass China, but still be very strong in standing up for human rights.
There have been such high expectations about this sort of coalition of like-minded democracies, right? Is it a concern for you that perhaps we may be seeing this from Western democracies in cases like, say, Myanmar? We had US, UK sanctions on Myanmar generals, but Asian countries really not joining in the effort.
No, they're caught. Asian countries are very much caught between the two elephants, China and the US. When I was talking to Southeast Asian ambassadors during the time of Trans-Pacific Partnership, they had pleaded with me for the United States to stay in the TPP. I asked why, and the answer is very clear. They said, well, we want to play you off against China, whether it's Vietnam or whether it's Philippines or whether it's Singapore. And it's very that we're there so that those countries can play us off one against each other. They don't want to be influenced too much by China. They don't want to stiff-arm China either. Same with the U.S.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept because we continue to see that dynamic play out across Asia. I do wonder what you will be watching out in the next few years, because as we were talking about that tech focus, the tech rivalry doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Even if we have tariffs being scrapped, the tech rivalry is there. We have seen the Biden administration put more focus on those strategically important sectors. Will we see more of an industrial policy perhaps coming from the U.S., something similar to what we're seeing in China in order to be able to compete? And is that worth it?
Answer is yes. Yeah, Biden will try to develop an industrial policy in the U.S. and it's so popular in the U.S. today. It's not just ordinary roads and bridges. It's also all the high-tech stuff, AI, quantum computing, et cetera. The problem is paying for it. Who is going to pay for all this? And we talk a lot about public-private partnerships, and we get to that point. It's very, very hard. It's very parochial, too. Some parts of the country, some members of Congress say, well, what about my state? My state should be part of this, too. So it's very difficult. But it's very popular. Biden's going to try to get it done. And I think that part of it is reaction to China's belligerence in some respects. There'll also be an effort to try to ring fence the most sensitive high technology that's is more nature of national security. That is, the U.S. will try to keep national security technology off on the side, and that'll be decoupled probably. But keep it off on the side so that the United States can continue to invest and trade China in other areas that are not nearly as sensitive from a national security point of view.
When it comes to the trade war, is that almost on the back burner for now, the issue of tariffs and whether they'll be wound back? Because there has been expectations that, there'll be, I guess, a reapplication of appropriate tariffs under the Biden administration. Is that something that is still in the works, do you think? Or is really the tech rivalry, the geopolitical concerns that's going on, the bigger picture here?
I think President Biden's going to try to find some way to roll back some of those tariffs, but not very quickly. First of all, the administration is getting its feet on the ground. It just recently named its USTR, just recently got confirmed their Secretary of Commerce, so they're taking the time. Second, it's leverage. All those tariffs are leveraged, and President Biden's not going to want to go about rescinding any of them or rolling it back until he gets something in return. And that means we have to look to see what the 2-week sessions in Beijing come up with. But more importantly, what signals do we get from China with respect to improving relations? I think relations will improve a bit. I say that essentially because both President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden know that we have to do our very best to try to work together. We're mutually involved in investment, trade, geopolitical, et cetera. We've got climate change, North Korea, global issues. So they'll both try. They both want to make sure their people are basically happy. But the problem is in the high-tech area, especially in the national security area, and if we can get that under control, then I think it's gradually we'll get back to a little better position. We'll be close to where we were before the Trump administration. But having said that, Joe Biden is going to be much tougher and much more circumspect and much more clear-eyed with respect to China than he was 4 years ago when he was vice president.
So when will we start to see those actions? Because so far, Congress, the president have been very, very busy with trying to pass the stimulus package. After that, there is a longer-term infrastructure package. When do we get to China?
I guess later. Joe Biden has to first focus on COVID. Get COVID under control. Get those vaccines out. Get people's arms shot. Get that percentage way up. Get the COVID deaths way down. And then start to deal with job loss in America on account of COVID. That's number 1, 2, and 3. And after that, then he's going to start to focus more on international issues, including China. To be honest, it's a little hard in the White House to walk and chew gum. They like to think that they can. It is hard. The White House tends to focus on one issue a lot more than another. And first is domestic COVID and jobs. Then we start to get to China.
We see vaccine diplomacy taking place as another form of kind of soft power, I guess, or economic power that China is using against some developing nations that can't get access to the Western developed vaccines. I suppose is there no longer a top priority at the moment with the Biden administration dealing with its own domestic priorities to try and take up the mantle of global leadership in this way again with regard to developing countries?
True. In the United States, it's politically very difficult for the United States to send vaccines to developing countries because Americans would say, hey, what about us? We need to take care of us first before we worry about other people. There is vaccine diplomacy in the world. China is very aggressive about it. The United States is aware of it. The United States is trying to be involved too, but it's hard politically because Americans want to make sure they're taken care of first before they start taking care of others. That's just a reality. That's a fact.